Welcome back, everyone. If I could see you, I'm sure I'd be saying you all look fantastic. Even those of you with messed up hair, laying in bed, watching YouTube, or playing on your phone. Regardless, we're glad you joined us. Today's topic I find exceptionally interesting and important. It's about how our brains process information. The submission comes from a round earther, which will make sense to you at the conclusion. Here we go. Dear E.T., I'm not a psychiatrist or a brain surgeon, but I do know some things about how our brains work, and that's what I was hoping to share with your readers. Brain plasticity, also known as neuroplasticity, refers to the ability of the brain to modify its structure, its tiny internal connections called dendrites. Without this plasticity, we would be unable to learn and remember new things or change our behaviors. We'd never get smarter, so going to school would be meaningless. The simplest way to think about the brain is to picture a big ball of wires with very complex circuitry, controlling everything we think and do. Each time we see, hear, or learn something new, the brain is slightly rewired to incorporate the new information. Like when you learned there was no real Santa Claus. From that point forward, your brain processed ideas about Santa Claus differently. Losing a job or ending a relationship also requires some rewiring. And depending upon how important these things were to you, or how many related connections were in your brain, the rewiring might be relatively simple, or it might be a long and difficult process, like grieving the loss of a loved one. Some people can't make the adjustment and slip into depression or substance abuse. In the worst cases, some people even commit suicide because they're unable to reformat their brain to accommodate the big changes in their life. Our brain wiring actually consists of octopus-like brain cells called neurons. Without getting into too much detail, it's fascinating to know that the average human brain has nearly 100 billion, with a B, neurons. Each neuron has lots of tentacle-looking connectors, allowing for around 100 trillion, with a T, connections, all in one brain. As I said earlier, these connections, which control our thoughts and actions, are continuously undergoing modifications. The good news is we have personal control over much of the modification that happens in our brains. The bad news is unhealthy influences and flawed information often corrupt our neural pathways. This makes it super important that we're careful about what we watch and listen to, about what we choose to believe. There's been so much in the news these last few years about misinformation, disinformation, social media grooming, and now the added concern that AI, artificial intelligence, will bring the ability to mislead people to a whole new level. The problem appears to be growing exponentially, so I hope folks take this seriously and really think about where you're getting your information. If it sounds one-sided or biased, then it probably isn't accurate, fair, and balanced. You can think of erroneous information, or information somebody has put their own spin on, as like getting a corrupt file on your computer. Once it's embedded in your computer or in your brain, the circuitry is flawed, and your future thoughts and beliefs will be built atop that shaky foundation. If you want some examples on how dangerous this can become, consider the Salem witch trials in the late 1600s, where 30 people were found guilty of being witches. 14 women and 5 men were executed by hanging. Consider the church-sponsored Inquisitions, which finally ended in the 1800s. The Inquisitions were responsible for the torture and murder of people who had beliefs different than what the church taught. Consider the Jonestown mass suicide in the United States in 1978, where more than 900 cult followers willingly drank cyanide poison at the bizarre urging of their leader, Reverend Jim Jones. Consider modern-day terrorists who are recruited with carefully crafted propaganda materials. Even the dysfunctional two-party political system in the United States is responsible for disseminating misinformation and disinformation to their respective followers. So I will repeat the importance of scrutinizing the value and accuracy of what we see and hear before allowing it to influence our thinking. One final case in point, it's flabbergasting to know how many people around the globe, still believe the earth is flat. With that, I end my plea to your readers to think about the credibility of your information sources. Thank you. Thank you, Round Earther. This is a very important subject, which has been on the news a lot lately. I hope our readers and listeners put some thought into their information sources as you suggest. And as always, we encourage anyone to send us your wise and helpful advice so we can pay it forward. Send it to etshares@mybetterment.net or just visit the website and you'll find lots of other resources too. Thanks all. Love ya, schmub ya.